All right, here we go with video 2, looking at the substance abuse and substance-related disorders. And then we're going to look at theories. And again, this is just like putting on sunglasses with different shades on them and looking at the issue and seeing how the different theories sort of consider how this becomes an issue and why is it an issue. So let's have a quick look at the theories. And of course, the following video, video number 3, will look at the treatments. Alrighty, so this is the first this is the second video in week 8, and we'll do a brief overview on the theories. All right, we start with the theoretical perspective. We're going to start with the biological, where we're going to focus on, with biological perspective that is, it's on the uncovering the biological pathways that may explain mechanisms of physiological dependence. Now remember, the physiological and the biological makes sense that it would tie those two together and saying what are the biological backgrounds that might explain why the physical component is dependency. And it pretty much looks at the disease model, and it treats problems of substance abuse and dependence as a disease process, which makes sense from a medical or biological perspectives. Now, the pathway in the brain involves the neurotransmitter dopamine, and it may explain the pleasure-induced effects of many drugs like nicotine, alcohol, cocaine, heroin, even marijuana, by increasing the levels of the neurotransmitter dopamine, the brain's reward and reinforcement agent, if you will. Now, the example that you see here is looking at that pathway and looking what the role and the difference between just a regular positive regard of what food is compared to that of cocaine. Now, genetics could play a role. It appears to be a genetics factors in that some of the substance abuse issues do run in families, and they found through twin studies there suggests that there's a link more for men, and much work is still emerging in this area, but there's still a strong environmental factor. So it's not entirely, as is often the case in many of the psychological disorders, as being one or another. In this case, biological or environmental. Now, if we look towards the learning environment, the learning perspective, learning theorists view substance abuse disorders as learned patterns of behavior. Now, there's a variety of things that we can look at. Operant conditioning, for example, where we perform for the reinforcement. The drug could be the reinforcement. People may be reinforced by the effects of alcohol and drugs, or by the reduced stress, or to avoid depressing experiences. So the positive reinforcement of the use of the drug could be one way to explain dependencies. Another explanation from a learning perspective would be alcohol and tension reduction. We drink to relieve tension. The more we do this, the more we drink, and it becomes habit forming. Now, another form of conditioning, if you will, is negative reinforcement to avoid withdrawal. So if you stop cold turkey, say you've been a drinker and you're concerned, maybe I'm drinking too much, and you stop cold turkey, some of the withdrawal experiences that you may have, you may want to avoid, so you'll start up again to avoid the withdrawal. Now remember, negative reinforcement is essentially, you know, remember I mentioned in my example earlier in the semester that if the water's dripping, you getting up in the night to turn it off is negative reinforcement because it improves the circumstances. Okay? So that's one reason that learning perspectives kind of thinks that either we positively reinforce through the association that we make that alcohol makes us happier, makes us more social, makes us more liked, or through negative, that in order to avoid certain negative things, I'll drink or I'll take drugs. Now, the conditioned model looks at how we are conditioned to crave drugs and alcohol through associations that, you know, things that we see like a bar or creates a craving. We go in and have a drink because we see this bar, and we've associated good times with the bar, or the bar with alcohol that we like, or the bar with friends that we enjoy being with, and it prompts a craving. And then lastly, learning perspective includes observational learning, links with families with adult drinkers, we see that kids will mimic or see this as being acceptable behavior and may start drinking at an earlier stage, perhaps. If we look at a cognitive perspective has focus on the roles of attitude, beliefs, and expectancies in accounting for substance use and abuse. When we have a positive expectancy, we want to reduce tension, we want to be better accepted or better liked. Alcohol and other substances tend to be a predictor of abuse. So that if we think that by drinking we'll have more friends and be more liked and reduce our tensions, then those expectations may in fact bear witness, but then we're doing so with the increased use of alcohol or drugs. Self-efficacy, or the belief in our ability to accomplish tasks, this self-efficacy expectancy, this is the perception that alcohol or other substances will in some manner improve our ability to do things and accomplish things. It will increase the likelihood of use and the probable abuse if we take this approach to our thinking about alcohol and drugs, that it's making us better at doing things. Certainly we've all met somebody who thought they were a better speaker, or more funny, or more engaging when they're drunk, when if you're not drunk with them, you might not see that point of view from them. Research suggests that the one drink effect may be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think that the outcome will be good, you're more than likely to use larger quantities. Now, if you go to figure 7.4, you'll see some information there relative to the cognitive perspective. Let's move into the psychodynamic therapists and their perspective. They focus, as they have in other psychological disorders, they focused on the inner conflicts originating in childhood, that they are believed to be the root of substance abuse problems. Psychodynamic theorists, particularly the older, more traditional version, view problems of substance abuse, such as excessive drinking and habitual smoking, as signs of being fixated in the oral stage of development. And that's not where all psychodynamic perspectives live, but certainly looking at these inner conflicts and looking at alcohol as a way of either dampening, using them as, if you will, another defense mechanism. The sociocultural perspective, well, they focus on the adaptation of culturally sanctioned prohibitions against excessive drinking and explaining differences among various ethnic groups and religious groups in the rates of alcoholism. So in this map here is just sort of demonstrating that the consumption of alcohol across the world is not the same. Some areas, some cultures embrace alcohol and the use of alcohol more and differently than other cultures. And so that can contribute to the degree of what is determined as alcohol abuse and what supports are provided, if any, for alcohol abuse. Social factors such as peer pressure can also influence the development of substance abuse. So as you can see with theory, as it's been consistent through theory, is that there isn't a consistent absolute right or wrong. And in fact, oftentimes theoretical perspectives, although varied, will have been overlapped, and we'll see them translate into treatment. So our next video here will be on treatment.